Friends, there comes a moment in life where holding on costs more than letting go. Saying goodbye isn't weakness, it's clarity. It's recognizing that the people, habits, or beliefs we leave behind are not a subtraction, but a multiplication of who we're becoming. And today, I have to say goodbye, not just for myself, but as a challenge to you. Because the truth is, until you're willing to let go, you'll never step into the life you were meant to live. Excuses are like shackles. They feel comfortable at first because they justify where you are, but the longer you carry them, the heavier they become, and the more they keep you stuck in place. Every one of us has a story we could use as a reason for why we can't move forward. Maybe you grew up without support. Maybe you didn't get the opportunities you thought you deserved. Maybe life hit you with setbacks you never saw coming. I get it. But here's the reality. The world doesn't bend for excuses. It doesn't pause to sympathize while you explain why you're not where you want to be. It keeps moving forward, and the people who refuse to let their excuses define them are the ones who end up leading the way. When you hold on to excuses, what you're really doing is handing over your power. Think about it. Every time you say, I can't because of this, or I would, but that happened, you're placing the steering wheel of your life in someone else's hands. And when you do that, don't be surprised when they drive you somewhere you never wanted to go. Responsibility, as heavy as it may sound, is actually liberation. Because the moment you say, it's on me, you are no longer waiting for someone else to rescue you. You stop being a victim and start being a builder. Now let's be honest, excuses are seductive. They soothe our pride, they give us a reason to stay the same, they protect us from discomfort. But they also steal years from us. They are the quiet killers of potential. And here's the question, do you want sympathy or do you want progress? Because the two rarely come together. The person who says goodbye to excuses is the person who stops waiting for the perfect conditions and starts creating them. I've seen people with every disadvantage imaginable rise up and achieve what most thought was impossible. And I've also seen people with every advantage squander their opportunities because excuses became their drug of choice. The difference isn't luck, it's mindset. Excuses will always be available, but so will results. You just can't have both. Think about how much energy it takes to justify why you're not doing something. The mental gymnastics of making excuses is exhausting. You could use that same energy to actually do the work, to make progress, to push forward. Excuses sound smart in the moment, but over time they make you look back and wonder why your life never changed. And one day, when you're older, when you don't have as much time left, those excuses won't sound so comforting anymore. They'll sound like regret. When you finally decide to say goodbye to excuses, it's not just about achieving goals. It's about identity. It's about who you are becoming. You stop being the person who explains away failure and start being the person who owns every outcome, good or bad. And once you own it, you can change it. Excuses don't change anything. Responsibility changes everything. This is where courage enters the picture. Because letting go of excuses means you can no longer hide behind them. It means if you fail, you have to admit it. If you succeed, you have to own it. That vulnerability scares people. But it's also the doorway to strength. You cannot build a strong foundation on blame, and you cannot build a meaningful future on excuses. You have to clear that ground, take full responsibility, and start building. And here's the powerful part. When you stop making excuses, you don't just change your own life, you inspire others. People see someone who refuses to play the victim, who refuses to settle, who refuses to point fingers, and they feel challenged to rise up themselves. Responsibility spreads, courage spreads, discipline spreads, and all of that starts with one simple decision to finally say goodbye to excuses. So if you're serious about growth, serious about building something bigger than yourself, and serious about living a life that matters, you cannot afford to keep carrying excuses. They don't belong in your future. They don't deserve space in your mind. Excuses are the language of limitation, and you were never meant to live limited. It's time to say goodbye. Excuses are the easiest thing in the world to make, and that's why they're so dangerous. They come disguised as logic, wrapped up in reasons that sound good enough to repeat out loud, but at the end of the day, they're just chains keeping you from moving forward. Every single one of us has a list of reasons we could use to explain why we're not where we want to be. Maybe it's your upbringing, maybe it's the people who doubted you, maybe it's the unfair break you got at some point in life. And you know what? All of that might be true. But truth doesn't equal destiny. Truth is just the starting point, and what you do with it is what separates people who live in regret from people who step into greatness. When you make excuses, what you're really doing is giving up ownership of your life. You're handing the keys to someone else, and then wondering why you keep ending up at the wrong destination. The moment you say, I can't because of this, you've already lost the battle because you've shifted the responsibility off yourself. That might feel safe in the short term, but it's deadly in the long term. You can't grow when you refuse to own your choices. You can't change what you won't take responsibility for. It's tempting, though, isn't it? Excuses make us feel protected. They shield us from the pain of failure because we can always point to something or someone else. They let us stay comfortable because if it's not our fault, we don't have to change. But what looks like protection is actually a prison. Excuses lock you in a cycle of stagnation. They keep you on the sidelines while other people run ahead, not because they had it easier, but because There's a tough truth that most people don't want to hear, but it has to be said. Not everyone in your life is meant to stay. Some people were only supposed to be part of your journey for a season, but because we fear being alone, or we feel obligated, we hold on long after their role is over, and the longer we hold on, the more we pay the price. Toxic relationships don't always announce themselves with drama or obvious betrayal. Sometimes they drain you quietly, they chip away at your confidence, they belittle your dreams, they make you question yourself. And little by little, you start shrinking just to make the relationship work. That's not loyalty, that's bondage. We've all been there, holding on to people we know are pulling us down, telling ourselves it will get better, making excuses for their behavior, trying to convince ourselves that love or history or family ties are enough reason to ignore the damage. But if someone consistently steals your energy, mocks your growth, or refuses to support the direction you're going, then you're not dealing with a friend, you're dealing with a weight. And if you keep carrying that weight, don't be surprised when you can't run the race you're meant to run. Cutting ties doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you're bitter. It doesn't even mean you don't care. What it means is that you've finally decided to care enough about your own calling not to let someone else sabotage it. There's a difference between helping someone and being held hostage by them. And too many people confuse loyalty with slavery. If a relationship only works when you're small, when you're silent, or when you abandon who you really are, that's not a relationship worth protecting. I know it's not easy. Sometimes these toxic connections are with the very people you grew up with, the ones you thought would always be in your corner. Sometimes it's with family members, sometimes it's with people you've loved deeply, and walking away feels like betraying a part of yourself. But ask yourself this, are they building you up, or are they breaking you down? Are they pushing you toward your purpose, or pulling you away from it? Every relationship is either an investment or a debt, and if it's a debt, the longer you let it go unpaid, the more it costs you. What you'll find, once you step away from toxic relationships, is a new kind of freedom. You start to realize just how much of your energy was being drained, how much of your potential was being suffocated, how much of your vision was being clouded by the noise of someone else's insecurity. And suddenly, with that space cleared, you can breathe again, you can dream again, you can see clearly again. You don't realize how heavy a burden was until you finally put it down. And here's the most important part. When you let go of toxic people, you create space for the right people. People who don't just tolerate your growth, but celebrate it. People who don't guilt you for dreaming bigger, but challenge you to dream even bigger still. People who want nothing from you except to see you become the best version of yourself. But those people will never come into your life if the wrong people are still occupying the space. It takes courage to walk away. It takes strength to say, I refuse to let this relationship define my future. But courage and strength are exactly what growth demands. You can't build a strong house on a rotten foundation, and you can't build a strong life while holding on to people who are tearing it apart from the inside. The most powerful word you'll ever say to a toxic relationship is the word goodbye. It's time to say goodbye. Comfort feels good, doesn't it? It's warm, it's safe, it's familiar. It whispers to you, stay here, don't risk it, don't stretch too far. And in the short term, that voice feels convincing. But here's the problem. Comfort zones don't just keep you safe, they keep you small. They keep you repeating the same patterns, living the same days, watching opportunities pass by because you never dared to step into the unknown. You were not created to live a life where every day looks like the last. You were created for growth, and growth demands discomfort. The truth is, the people who achieve great things aren't necessarily smarter or luckier. They're just the ones willing to step into places that felt scary, places that stretched them, places where they didn't know the outcome but moved anyway. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever experienced in life came because you left comfort behind. The first time you learned something new, the first time you pushed yourself physically, the first time you tried something different, there was discomfort, maybe even fear. But that's where the growth happened. That's where the future started to open up. Comfort zones are tricky because they disguise themselves as stability. They tell you that staying where you are is safe, but in reality, it's the most dangerous place you can be, because while you're standing still, the world is moving forward. While you're playing it safe, your potential is shrinking. While you're clinging to what feels secure, you're missing the very opportunities that could transform your life. Comfort zones don't just keep you where you are, they slowly pull you backward, and one day you wake up realizing years have passed and nothing has changed. The hardest part is that leaving comfort behind means sacrifice. It means saying no to easy pleasures in order to pursue lasting rewards. It means risking rejection, risking failure, risking embarrassment. And let's be honest, nobody likes those things. But those who rise above mediocrity understand that temporary discomfort is the price of permanent growth. Every great leader, every great innovator, every great success story was written by someone who refused to stay where it was easy. Think of it like working out. When you lift weights, your muscles tear slightly. That's uncomfortable. But that tearing is the only way they grow back stronger. Without that tension, without that resistance, your body never changes. Life works the same way. If you're not willing to endure the resistance, you're not going to see the results. You can't expect strength without strain, and you can't expect growth without discomfort. I know the temptation is real. We love routines. We love certainty. We love knowing exactly what tomorrow looks like. But here's the question: are you willing to trade in your future just to feel good in the present? Because every time you choose comfort over growth, that's exactly what you're doing. You're postponing your potential. You're pressing pause on the person you were created to become. And eventually, comfort becomes the biggest thief in your life, robbing you of experiences you'll never get back. But here's the good news. The second you decide to step out of comfort, you discover that what once looked terrifying actually becomes manageable. You realize fear was just a shadow, not a wall. You realize that discomfort doesn't break you, it shapes you. And every time you step into it, your comfort zone expands. What was once hard becomes normal, and now you're prepared to tackle even bigger challenges. That's how growth compounds. That's how people go from ordinary to extraordinary. And understand this: you don't need to make giant leaps all at once. You don't have to burn down everything familiar overnight. Growth happens in steps. Start small. Push a little further today than you did yesterday. Try something that makes you nervous. Take the risk you've been avoiding. Each act of courage chips away at the walls of comfort until one day you realize you're living in a whole new world. A world you never would have seen if you had stayed where it was safe. Comfort will always be calling your name. It will always tempt you to stay where you are. But if you want to live a life that matters, if you want to reach your potential, if you want to create impact, you have to learn to ignore that voice and chase something greater. Because the truth is, comfort zones are where dreams go to die. It's time to say goodbye. One of the hardest prisons to escape isn't built of concrete or steel. It's built in your own mind. It's the fear of what other people think. That fear dictates how you dress, how you speak, what risks you take, and what dreams you even allow yourself to imagine. It whispers, what if they laugh? What if they judge you? What if they reject you? And so, instead of living boldly, you live cautiously. Instead of pursuing your vision, you edit yourself to fit into someone else's. That's no way to live, and deep down you know it. The truth is, no matter what you do, someone is going to have an opinion. If you play it safe, they'll say you lack ambition. If you step out, they'll say you're arrogant. If you succeed, they'll call you lucky. If you fail, they'll call you foolish. You can't win with people whose entire contribution to life is commentary. And yet, we hand them power they don't deserve. We let their words shape our choices. We let their judgment stop us before we even begin. That's not freedom. That's slavery to the opinions of others. Here's the reality. Most people are too busy worrying about their own lives to actually care about yours. And the ones who do spend their time picking you apart are usually doing it because they're too afraid to face their own reflection. Critics shout from the sidelines because they lack the courage to get in the game. And yet, we treat their voices as gospel, forgetting that the only people qualified to speak into our lives are the ones building something themselves. Living in fear of judgment is like walking with a weight strapped to your back. Every step feels heavy, not because you're not capable, but because you're dragging around invisible chains. Imagine what you could do if that weight was gone. Imagine the ideas you'd pursue, the conversations you'd have, the risks you'd take if you weren't constantly calculating how it might look to someone else. That's the life waiting for you on the other side of goodbye, the goodbye to fear. I get it though. Rejection stings. Nobody likes to feel ridiculed or misunderstood, but here's the thing: rejection isn't the end of you. It's proof you tried. It's proof you had the courage to step out while others stayed silent. The people who've made the biggest difference in history weren't the ones who blended in, they were the ones who dared to stand out. They knew the cost of being different, and they chose to pay it anyway, and that choice is available to you every single day. Think about how much of your life has already been edited because of fear. How many times have you kept quiet when you should have spoken? How many times have you hidden your dreams because you didn't want to be laughed at? How many times have you settled for less because you didn't want anyone to call you unrealistic? Every one of those moments is a little piece of freedom slipping away. But the good news is you don't have to keep living that way. You can reclaim it. The shift happens the moment you decide that your purpose matters more than their opinions, that your calling is bigger than their criticism, that your future is more important than their approval. When that conviction takes root in you, the voices of judgment lose their power. They don't disappear, but they don't control you anymore. You stop needing validation from people who were never meant to validate you in the first place. And here's the beauty of it. When you live authentically, when you stop apologizing for who you are, you give others permission to do the same. Courage is contagious, boldness spreads, and before long, the very people who once doubted you may find themselves inspired by the example you set. That's the irony of fear. The moment you stop bowing to it, you start leading others out of it. So ask yourself this: who are you living for? The nameless critics, the jealous peers, the crowd that claps when you fail and gossips when you succeed? Or are you living for the higher calling, the greater purpose, the vision that pulls you beyond yourself? Because at the end of your life, those opinions won't matter. What will matter is whether you live true to who you were called to be. It's time to say goodbye. At some point, we all reach that crossroads where we either keep clinging to what's been holding us back, or we finally choose to let go. Saying goodbye isn't easy, it never is, but it's necessary if we want to grow, if we want to lead, if we want to live a life that actually matters. Goodbye to excuses, goodbye to toxic people, goodbye to comfort, goodbye to fear of judgment. Each one is a choice, and each choice takes courage. But the reward is freedom. The reward is clarity. The reward is stepping into the kind of life that was waiting for you all along. So today isn't about loss, it's about liberation. And the question you have to answer is simple: are you willing to say goodbye so you can finally say hello to the future you were made for?